There's a feeling that lives inside some relationships that has no clean name. It's not quite love and it's not quite fear. Or maybe it's both at once, running so close together you can't find the seam. And if you've ever tried to examine it, you may have noticed something unsettling. The moments you feel most intensely connected to someone are sometimes the moments right after you thought you might lose them. The argument that ends with relief. The silence that finally breaks. The text that comes through after 40 minutes of not coming through. And somewhere underneath it, a question you haven't let yourself finish asking. Is this love? Or is this just what it feels like when the threat goes away? This video is about that question. Not to answer it for you, but to give you something you probably haven't had yet. A way to look. Here's the experience as it actually lives in the body. When the person you're with is present, attentive, warm, close, there is something that settles. Not exactly joy. More like the lifting of a weight you didn't consciously know you were carrying. And when they pull back, even slightly, even normally, something tightens. Not grief, exactly. More like a low current of alert. A scanning that starts before you decide to scan. You find yourself tracking things. The warmth in their voice versus yesterday. The specific word they used, and whether it means something. The way they said goodnight. Whether it had the same texture as the night before. And you already know this isn't rational, intellectually, that you're reading signal into noise. You know the silence is probably fine. And still, the tracking continues because it isn't coming from the part of you that knows things. What this actually is, this specific texture of feeling, is something most people have only ever had one word for. Love. Because it is intense. Because it is constant. Because it pulls your attention like nothing else does. Intensity is the only metric most people were ever given for love. And the problem, the one this whole video is about, is that fear is equally intense. In fact, fear and love in the attachment system are not opposites. They are neighbors. And sometimes they share the same address. So let's look at why that is, at what's actually happening beneath the surface of that intensity. Your nervous system was not designed to evaluate the meaning of your feelings. It was designed to evaluate your safety. Those are two completely different jobs. When someone you're attached to pulls away, even in an ordinary way, even in a way that means nothing, the attachment system reads it as threat, not metaphorical threat, physiological threat. The same alert system that would fire if you were in actual danger. And when that threat resolves, when they come back, when the text arrives, when the distance closes, the nervous system floods with relief. Research on attachment and the brain's reward circuitry shows something that most people find genuinely shocking when they first encounter it. The relief of a threat resolving activates some of the same neural pathways as love, which means the feeling of them coming back can be almost indistinguishable in the body from the feeling of loving them. This is not a character flaw. This is not evidence that something is wrong with you. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Running a threat detection protocol that was built in an environment where this kind of alertness was necessary. The pattern was intelligent once. What it cannot do, what no threat detection system can do, is tell the difference between relief and joy, and that distinction is the whole thing. Relief is what happens when something bad stops. Joy is what happens when something good arrives. They feel similar in the body. They are not the same thing. Relief says, the danger has passed. Joy says, I want to be exactly here. And for someone whose nervous system learned early that closeness was conditional, that love came and went based on signals you had to learn to read. Relief became the dominant language of love, not because you are broken, because that was the vocabulary available. This is where the confusion lives, not in dishonesty, not in immaturity, in the fact that your nervous system built a map of love that included fear as one of its primary colors. And the map feels true, because it is true to the territory it was built in. It just doesn't match the territory you're standing in now, so here is the distinction. Not as a verdict. As a tool, love, when it is operating without fear underneath it, expands. It makes you more of yourself, not less. You can disagree with this person without it feeling like structural collapse. You can be apart without the absence having a physical location in the body. You can want things for yourself, space, attention, solitude, without those wants feeling like a betrayal of the relationship. Love that is mostly love tolerates the full person, not a managed version of them, not the version that stays close and attentive and never triggers the alarm. The actual person who has moods and distance and ordinary days where they are just elsewhere in their own life. Fear. When it is operating beneath what you're calling love contracts, it narrows around the other person's behavior. Their proximity becomes the primary data point. Their mood is something you monitor, not because you're curious about them, but because it tells you whether you're safe. Fear-based intensity needs the other person to stay a particular way. Love-based presence can hold them changing. Here is the body question. The one you can actually use when you're with this person. Not after a repair, not after a reconnection, not in the relief of them coming back, but in an ordinary moment, a Tuesday evening, nothing remarkable happening. What are you feeling? Not what you think about them. Not what the relationship means to you. What is actually happening in your body right now in the quiet of just being near them? If the answer is something like settled, present, easy, not monitoring, that's one thing. If the answer is something like waiting, tracking, scanning, not quite landed, that's another. Neither answer is a verdict. But both answers are information. And the reason this distinction matters, the reason it's worth sitting with, is not so you can decide whether to stay or leave. It's so you can begin to know what you're actually working with. Because you cannot update a pattern you haven't seen clearly. And you cannot see it clearly if the only word available for the intensity is love. Love and fear can genuinely coexist in the same relationship. This is not a sign that the love isn't real. It is a sign that there is work available, not to fix the relationship, but to update what your nervous system has been using as its definition of safety. That work is real, and it is possible, below the level of understanding, in the place where the pattern actually lives. If this distinction landed, if you felt something shift in how you're holding your own experience, there's a next step that goes deeper than any single video can. The resource linked in the description is a structured process built specifically for this. Working through the difference between love and anxious attachment is the foundation for genuine intimacy, not as information but as an actual practice that moves at the level where the pattern lives. It's in the description and in the pinned comment when you're ready. The most important thing to say before this ends: this distinction does not require a verdict on your relationship. It does not mean that what you've been feeling isn't real. Fear is real, relief is real, the intensity is real. None of that becomes retroactively false because some of it was running on a threat detection system rather than on pure, uncomplicated love. You are not being asked to decide whether this is love or fear. You are not being asked to leave. You are not being asked to conclude anything about your capacity to love. What you're being asked, gently, and only when you're ready, is to look. Because the viewers who have sat with this distinction for a while, not as a crisis, but as a quiet, ongoing question, tend to notice something interesting. The looking itself changes something. Not immediately. Not because insight produces transformation. You already know it doesn't. That's why you're here. But because once you can feel the difference between relief and joy, once you have that distinction available in your own body, something shifts in how you relate to your own reactions. You start to catch yourself in the scan, not to stop it. You can't stop it, not yet, and trying to stop it isn't the work, but to name it. That's the tracking, that's the alert system, that's the pattern running. And in the moment of naming it, even briefly, even imperfectly, you are not fully inside it. You are watching it. That gap between being the pattern and watching the pattern is not nothing. It is, actually, where everything starts. The next time you feel the intensity spike, the next time someone you love goes quiet and something in you goes on alert, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to perform calm you don't feel. You can just ask the question, is this love? Or is this the alarm? Both can be true. And now you have a way to look. The link is there. And in the pinned comment, whenever you're ready to go further, think back to a moment when you felt most intensely connected to someone. And now ask yourself, was it love or was it relief? What comes up when you sit with that question? Here's what to hold from this. Not as a conclusion, not as something to resolve by the end of the week, but as something that is already true about who you are. You came to this video with a question you may not have been able to finish asking. You stayed through an answer that didn't make things simpler. It made them more honest. That is not the behavior of someone who has given up on understanding themselves. The distinction between love and fear of loss is not a test you pass or fail. It is a lens, and the fact that you now have it, that you can feel, even slightly, the difference between relief and joy, between settling and scanning, means the lens is already yours. Your nervous system did not fail you. It built what it needed to build in the environment it was given. And now, slowly, through moments of noticing rather than moments of fixing, it is learning something new. Not through understanding, through the accumulation of small, honest looks. The version of you that can love someone without needing them to stay a particular way to feel safe. That version is not some distant future self. It is the direction your nervous system is already learning to move in. One honest question at a time. You don't have to know the answer yet. You just have to keep looking. And you already proved today that you can.